We can start. Now we can start. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am Gaia, and I'm a member of Anti-Racism Laboratory, Laboratorio Antirazzista Ferrara, and I'm very happy to be here with you and to see all of you connected today. First of all, I wanted to thank Carlo, Tafari, and Lola for their participation and their availability. We appreciate so much your collaboration. Today, we will talk about cultural appropriation in lifestyle with a particular focus on fashion industry. And let me introduce our guests. The first one is Lola Okuyiga. Yes. Okay, it is right. Perfect. A graduate of the University of the Arts in Law, and she has been working in the fashion industry world for more than 10 years. First of all, as a fashion assistant of Vice magazine, then as a marketing coordinator for Fred Perry, co-founder and brand director of Hambier London, and as a buyer for retailers like ASOS, and she is also founder of her Wonderder store. Then we have Tafari Eins. She is a model, born and raised in Jamaica, and moved to London to pursue his brilliant career. He's appeared on the pages of GQ magazine, GQ Style, Another Man, and British Vogue, and ID, and other important trade magazines. In addition, he is the co-founder of Is It News. He also has collaborated with Vivienne Westwood on several campaigns and filming and several campaigns for her, and he supports philanthropic campaigns like Vivienne Westwood's one to combat global warming. This collaboration has been organized with the collaboration of Slam Jam, an international brand born in Ferrara from an idea of Carlo Tinelli and
Luca Benini, actually.
Oh, Luca Benini, sorry.
Yeah, just because I wish I was the one, but I'm not.
Sorry. And so sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
And we will talk with him, Tafari, and Lola we will talk about cultural appropriation and about the difference between appropriation and appreciation in fashion. And I have finished. So now Leonardo will talk about our laboratory briefly. Thank you very much.
Very briefly. So, Leonardo, where is Leonardo? Oh, he disappeared.
I'm here.
Okay. Good afternoon, Leonardo.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sorry, I have some problem. Basterà dire il tutto. Cosa ho fatto?
Sei uscito.
Sorry. Okay. Do you hear
Microphone,
me? No.
Please.
Okay. Do you hear me?
Off. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Let me introduce the laboratory. We are the Anti-Racism Laboratory, that is a working group belonging to the University Center for International Development Cooperation, which aims to propose a multidisciplinary path of reflection on the issue of racism inside and outside the university. The laboratory is open to students, former students, and professors of all disciplinary fields, and the objectives of its objectives are pursued with a transversal approach, not only through lectures and online lectures because of COVID, but also with theatrical performances and other approaches that allow us to broaden the reflection in areas not always proper to the academic context. The group commitment is aimed at a work of synthesis completed with all the tools of scientific analysis of the knowledge brought into the field by meeting of disciplines, minds, and ideas, thanks to the University of Ferrara. So I leave Carlo introduce the work of Slam Jam. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Carlo Tinelli, and I'm head of marketing at Slam Jam. As the guy said, that's a company based in Ferrara. It was born in 1989 and operates in the fashion and lifestyle industry since then. Now it's over 3 decades, and it's always been supporting diversity, different cultures in a very natural way. I mean, the term streetwear that now is pretty abused is actually coming from that, like different energies, cultural influences from all over the globe merging into movements that then actually gather on the street and get like on fashion catwalks and stuff like that. So I'm going to briefly show a video. It's 2 minutes long about what Slam Jam is, to show you a bit more about what we do, and then tell you a bit about how everything started with the University of Ferrara. So let me check how to share. Okay, there you go.
1989, a vision. A dream of counterculture revolution. Fueled by music, life, creation, art, independent minds, fashion, energy, youth culture, activism, the street, luxury, emotions, contemporary culture. And reality. A new era is dawning. Slam Jam is born. A platform is instated for like-minded people across the world. An incubator of ideas and creativity. A global cultural institution. An independent cultural activist. A singular identity. The upside down A standing for. The mathematical symbol to represent universal quantification and predicate logic for each, for every, for any, for all. A freely constituted cultural ecosystem framed by a community of independent people and cultures. The circle A symbol standing for rejection of hierarchy, absolute freedom, dissidence. The icon of an independent voice, uncorporate uniform. The distinctive clothing worn by members of the same group or organization. The garments chosen to unite. Tribes, gangs, fans, protest movements, cults, ultras, squads, crews, cliques, groups, federations, leagues, societies. Slam Jam stands as the ambassador of a cultural wave, to unite shared values amongst the chaos. For like-minded people across the world. Slam Jam.
Okay, I hope you've seen that and you like that. That sums up pretty much what Slam Jam is and how we evolved as a distribution company throughout the last 3 decades. After starting the business as a distribution company, serving retailers in Italy first, then Southern Europe, and then the globe, we started the retail venture, selling clothing to end consumers directly, and then became eventually what we name a post-brand entity. So we do host exhibition, cultural moments, product collaboration with major brands like Nike, and so on. Why are we here today? Basically, almost 1 year ago, or a bit less, something crazy happened in the world and all over the internet. There was the Black Lives Matter movement, and at that time we've seen the industry players we work alongside starting to raise their voice to express something that for us as a company was very natural, and actually since day one that was part of our mindset. So embracing diversity and actually celebrating and becoming a platform for different cultures within fashion and the lifestyle industry. So we decided to act silently without actually using this as a marketing tool or something to say, okay, we're cool because we think diversity is important. We actually think that is crucial, not just important and vital. And so we decided to work with Laboratorio Antirazzista from the University of Ferrara, where Slam Jam was born. And with the team, we actually discussed many options, and this is the pilot moment. Actually, talking with 2 friends, Lola and Tafari, we got the chance to meet them by working together, discussing things and potential opportunities, and we really want to discuss with them what actually is cultural appropriation versus appreciation. This is a quite important theme we think, especially within fashion as an industry, because as you can imagine, it's pretty happens quite often to see major brands or corporation or even small brands to think culture is something you can use as a tool instead of something that is really important for communities, people, and so on. So we really wanted to shed some light with these 2 friends, and I'm now leaving it to Lola and Tafari to start a conversation. And yes, thanks a lot.
Cheers, Carlo. That was lovely. I love the video. How should I start? How do we want to start? Do you want me to talk a bit about kind of what I've been doing in the space and then kind of go from there, or do we want to go with the questions? I'm easy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good to start with your background, who you are, and then we can move on from there.
All right, I'll share a little. Got a little few slides. Oh gosh, can you hear me echoing? Is that all right? Okay, cool.
Yeah, perfect. It's okay. It's okay, Lola. Perfect.
Okay,
it's
cool.
Okay.
So this is me. So I'm Lola. I was born in Lagos. I came to the UK when I was a little girl. I'm founder and CEO of Wonder, and basically my background is in buying and creating sell-out fashion brands and collections across luxury, contemporary, street and sportswear and e-commerce. I guess I'm one of a handful of kind of Black female decision-making execs in the space, and I kind of came up with the concept of Wonder as a result of kind of the intersectionality that I obviously have, being a Black woman. I can't separate one from the other. And kind of knowing I love the industry so much. Like I always say, or my friends say, there's two things I love, like people and product. And so I kind of have worked in this industry and kind of seen people kind of being mistreated, but also having an amazing time and also amazing product and less amazing product coming out. So I created Wonder to kind of intersect the two loves and kind of try and do fashion retail in a bit of a better way, I suppose, that kind of looks after multiple stakeholders. And I think that's also why representation matters so much. But yeah, these are some of the brands I've worked with. I was just finished a role at Thread Styling. Like I say, I'm founder and CEO of Wonder now. I was at Brown's Fashion for a while, which was great. And as Gaia mentioned, I was at ASOS and Fred Perry too. Fred Perry was great as well because it had such a great relationship with subculture. You know, I came in through the fashion route, but you know, there's so much with music and other subcultures. So yeah, that was a really great experience in terms of seeing how you could work collaboratively with subcultures to create amazing product moments and, you know, I guess not be appropriative. So yeah, a little bit about Wonder. You can see all of those little lovely melanated faces there. Wonder is basically Wonder the Store, which is a multi-brand platform which hasn't launched yet. We'll be launching in the fourth quarter of this year. Wonder the brand, which are direct-to-consumer own label, and then Wonder and Friends, which is our kind of where we collaborate, do consultancy and partnerships as well. And I'm a really huge fan of collaboration, as you'll see on the next slides. I really believe it's the answer to sort of appropriation, and I'll go on to that later. So yeah, the problems we're solving, Black people as a community, we have very little equity on the back end and the business side of fashion. So after having worked in fashion buying for like over 10 years, quite often I'd go to these showrooms with these amazing luxury brands and whatever else, but I wouldn't very often see people that looked like me. And that was crazy to me because, as we saw on one of the previous slides, when it comes to generating demand, especially with millennial and Gen Z consumers, you know, you've got Black people all over it, like over-indexing on our influence. And yeah, so we're huge demand generators. Black culture is popular culture. Hip hop is the dominant music genre. We also know that diverse organizations are more profitable. So this is where the kind of being more inclusive and diverse isn't just like holding hands, like, you know, dawning of Aquarius, even though I'm a bit of a hippie and I love that stuff. It's also really makes great business sense. And so I think that's why I'm really excited about talking to, you know, the fashion students of the future, people who are going to go into the world of work and be able to sort of adopt this or, you know, work in this way because it's actually the right thing to do on all counts. Fashion brands and retailers, as we mentioned, last year's iteration of BLM, we saw a lot of black squares thrown up, which I think was great in terms of an intention to do something. Wonder kind of exists to help businesses or brands do it in a way that fits into their business model, because a lot of the time people's KPIs aren't necessarily moral, but they are commercial. And we really try and sit in the intersection of that to kind of show that doing both is actually the future. And then we know millennial and Gen Z consumers are more likely to shop at retailers that align with their social values. So yeah, for all businesses, it's really the way to go. Little mood board with some of the sort of examples of appropriation or sort of, I guess, cultural insensitivity that we've seen in the world recently. I think, so, you know, that Oprah Hermes thing always just gets me. And it's like a lot of these brands, they're amazing brands, right? And cancel culture, this is why, do I believe, like, not believe in it, but it's an interesting one, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But, you know, these brands have years of heritage and people love them. And so it's like, it's not really about cancelling them. It's about how we can work together to move forward in a way that's more positive, I suppose. So, yeah, I always say I've got a few principles that I've been trying to distill down in order to kind of scale the work that I've done as an individual or within the companies I've worked for. So one of the key ones, I have quite a few, I've got like 12, but is representation is always the answer. Collaboration plus capital equals appreciation, not appropriation. And so I say that to say, if you see a subculture or something that you like, or you've got a mood board with all these things, find out who created the image. And this doesn't just go for like diversity. Find out who created the image, like give them some capital, aka pay them, collaborate, and then Bob's your uncle. So yeah, here's some examples. So literally, I was working at ASOS as buyer. I did this Made in Kenya collection, and prior to that, it had been called ASOS Africa. which is problematic possibly because it was only made in Kenya. But the product wasn't great. It was a bit kind of a charity project as opposed to trying to give the community skills and like kind of the rod to fish as opposed to just the fish. So I took it over working with my amazing team. We got it super, super profitable. We collaborated with people like Leomi Anderson, Julia Danuga to create this really fun collection. And as you can see there, Vogue said that it's a definition of cultural appreciation, which is nice. So yeah, just a little bit of press about that. And then just to show you some examples quickly of why representation matters. So I don't think I'm particularly amazing. I just think that I was fortunate enough to be in positions with hard work and, you know, I did push my way through, but to be able to work with a lot of brands during my time at Browns and ASOS and Fred Perry. And because of that, it meant that certain decisions were made because there was a Black person in the room. So for example, we did ASOS's first do-rag with Laquan Smith, an amazing Black American designer. And, you know, I had some comments around, I think it was from one of like senior management. I was like, oh, should we call it a do-rag? Maybe we should call it something else. And I was like, what else would you call it? And she's like, oh, you know, like a head tie scarf. And I was like, yeah, they would have, if had I not been there as a Black person, they would have called it a head tie wrap scarf, and that would have been appropriation, and they would have been rightfully dragged by Twitter, I'm sure. But anyway, it was called a do-rag. Homecoming, again, this is a really good example of like collaboration, capital, working with Grace and Alex at Homecoming with a festival they do in Lagos to create amazing product moments with some of the world's best brands. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And then I've talked to you about ASOS Africa already. Also, in terms of inclusivity, working on the Paralympics was great. Again, we worked with the athletes, the Paralympians, to be like, hey, what do you need like from this kit, from these formal wear outfits? And then, yeah, we worked collaboratively and they absolutely loved the looks. They found them really great and easy to wear. And, you know, that's the thing, right? Everyone should, I really believe that in fashion, there should be joy throughout the process. It shouldn't just be the people at the end buying the bougie bag. You know, everyone in the supply chain and all stakeholders should really win. And it's possible, definitely, now in 2020. So yeah, that's it. That's me, my little intro and why I feel so strongly about this and why I'm really happy to be here today as well. So thank you, Carlo and the team.
Thank you, Lola. That was really interesting. I've got a question already. Sorry, I know it's not the Q&A yet, but what do you think is the reason why cultural appropriation happens most of the time instead of appreciation? Like, what's the element lacking in companies or teams deciding actually to do something that ends up being appropriation instead of appreciation, or as you said, representation, which is pretty simple as an answer. I mean, actually it's just collaboration, give capital, and act as a platform. So give the voice. I think this can actually be applied to many industries, actually to all industry. Think about going to some countries, exporting democracy, or building things rather than allowing with some tools native population to do their own things. So what do you think is the element lacking? Is it an educational element or what?
I mean, it's hard because I think, as we know, and all of those lovely infographics that happened last summer around, like, you know, non-Black people, educate yourselves, like in your own spaces, in your own time, like it's not our job to do the labor. But so I feel like education, yes, but then a lot of people tend to have to do that of their own volition. And I feel like, well, you're not going to get change there because everyone's so busy anyway. Like, why would you spend your time unless you're that way inclined in educating yourself? And that's where I think like these structures need to implement, I guess, like you say, training, but from people. Like, if you're going to ask Black people to do the work, which I think in some cases we should collaborate, then like get them into your spaces, pay them and say, like, hey, like, what are we doing? Let's work together to solve this issue. We're going to pay you for your time and for your insights and your strategic thoughts. And I think that's, again, where representation like so matters. And I know, like, last year when this iteration of BLM happened, I made a little video just about BLM in the workplace, because I was really concerned that a lot of businesses would be like, oh, let's just quickly get some like entry level like Black people, because like, you know, it's cheap and like there's, you know, it'll be easy. But then working in fashion, it's like not just, you know, has racist elements, but it's also quite classist and quite elitist. So to be able to do an internship, for example, you have to have the privilege that you either live near the job or somebody else is gonna pay for it. So I think it's the representation piece really requires, I think, more Black owned businesses and ownership. And so we can create economic inclusion, so we can kind of tell our stories in collaboration with platforms, as opposed to kind of waiting for businesses and platforms to say, yes, okay. Do you know what I mean? And so I do think representation really is the answer, but it's a very nuanced thing. But I think in the interim, like that little thing, like collaboration plus capital and representation equals appreciation of, because I feel like it spans, like you say, across multiple industries. It spans across like different, you can just pay people for the work that you love that they do, or their culture that you think is cool, be it skateboarding, be it, you know, Black culture, whatever. Just like pay them, listen to them, let them do the work and tell the stories their way, and like you're going to win, because it's going to sell, because it's going to resonate as well. That's the thing, it's going to be authentic, and authenticity always sells, I think, anyway.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, that's really interesting. So I guess you've experienced many times the feeling of being like appropriated, like your culture or something you do in general. Is
just
something that happened to you, like in your career? I mean, in the industry, there's a lot of that.
Just another question, Carlo. Please, can I ask something, Lola? Just a little. Sorry, Lola. Before you quoted the impact of Black Lives Matter on the fashion. No, it's right. No, the impact, the influence of the Black Lives Matter movement, and just a little question about it. It's really so important, this impact, to improve the appreciation of Black culture inside the fashion world, or is just a little step in direction to this different vision of appreciation style?
I think that it's just a step, and I think I'd love to hear from Tafari what he thinks after this as well, because I think it's a step in the sense that everyone was at home, like not everyone, but everyone was privileged enough to be able to work from home, was at home, and nobody could really look away from what was happening. Hence why social media really were like, okay, like, you know, we can't distract ourselves, like this is really happening. And I think a lot of people, I always say with the fashion industry, and I can't speak to any other industry because I've not worked in any other industry, quite frankly, but what drives change on the whole, on a mass level, like we've got amazing businesses like Slam Jam who always have got it. But when you think about the ones that are like employ thousands, tens and thousands of people that really have the biggest impact in terms of, I guess, just how many people know them outside of the fashion industry, they tend to look at what competitors are doing and be like, oh, what's going on over there? And then maybe try and emulate it because they see it being successful. Or it's like, what's Business of Fashion writing about? What's Vogue writing about? So I think this iteration of BLM kind of was like, okay, we need to do something about it. But then there were quite a few businesses, I think, just like with sustainability, until it reached this kind of critical mass of like, actually our consumers are bothered, then there wasn't that much kind of widespread change. I think it's an interesting one because I think a lot of people just genuinely don't know what to do. And that's where I felt like I can, if it's a systemic issue, I understand the system. So I want to try and help him in my way whilst also, you know, trying to live life. But I don't know. I think I think we all know there's a lot more to be done, and I feel like there is definitely a shift, and people know it's important, and they continue to know it's important. The people that care. The people that don't, keep it moving. And I think we just have to show that doing the right thing, acting with integrity, help, like working towards inclusion works financially as well, because otherwise those businesses get with the program or they don't do well and they get left behind and the whole world moves forward without them. So, Tafari, what do you think?
Thank you, Lola.
Yeah, I completely agree with most of what you said, Lola. It's quite interesting because for me, just the opposite, modeling, and it's actually really have real-time experiences over the years of cultural appropriation, racism in the fashion industry. But when you're modeling and you're quite young, you don't really get the grip of it yet. And well, for me personally, and it only happened at that point, when now looking back at it now, seeing that what I've been through and being like, wow, this is crazy. Like, this is what this was. And I had no idea at the time, because, you're so grateful for like being the token one, that got the job, and the token one that, everyone is going to put out there. But, you'd kind of just like so appreciative of that and want the money. And, you kind of not even notice what's going on around you. And that's why I'm so grateful for this time, where we can actually see what's going on. And that's what the pandemic did for the first time, allow us to actually focus on what's happening. Because George Floyd was not the first person to be killed in America by the police. So it was just because of the pandemic we're able to focus and actually see how crazy this was and got everyone to pay attention. So in a way, I'm glad for that. But yeah, it's been a crazy journey, for sure. Actually, can I share my screen?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, I just put on here. Can you still see me? Or
Yeah.
okay, perfect. Well, yeah. So basically, yeah, I'm Tafari Eins. I came from Jamaica when I was in my teens, and yeah, experienced modeling and music because my father is I wouldn't say famous, but my father contributed to music. He's in his band called Massive Attack, and growing up around that and fashion gave me a little bit of insight now looking back at what I had experienced. Climate change, global warming, all this stuff I really care about the planet a lot, care about fashion sustainability, representation, and diversity. And because of these things and all the problems I've seen, looking back at what I've experienced, I eventually came up with Is It News, which is an interview platform that try to be a voice and try to
I'm
be...
sorry, Tafari. You can change the picture, because the slide, please, because we didn't see the change of a slide. So
okay.
Sorry. Just
can you see?
Okay.
Now? Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Now
okay, yes. Thank you.
News. Oh, sorry.
Yes.
It's right. Thanks, Tafari.
So Is It News basically is an interview platform that came about through me and my best friend Clement Carnaby's, the two of us there in the photograph. We were actually in California, in LA, and we were just going out to see a friend. So we were just driving to see a friend, and the police, 3 or 4 police car drove down on us and stopped us, pointing guns, shouting very aggressively. And I really swear to God, I thought I was going to lose my life. I thought I could see the news headline, cops mistaken black and French kid you know, it's just crazy, and they would have just gotten away with it. Everything came through my mind, and was really traumatizing for us. Luckily, they asked us to get out the car one by one individually, still pointing guns, still shouting. We just kept silent. Clement, my best at the time, he is from Paris, like France, so he was just like not saying anything. I didn't say anything either. We just like quite quiet. All the cops came around us. You know, my friend at the time was American. Rashad was asking why you stopped us. You know, was asking the questions. And based on my experience, seeing how people are treated, the best thing you can do is either you say nothing or you say something and you're dead. So we were just kind of like, think there's no rights, there's no justice. So we just like kept quiet. And the cops decided to check our passports, create an ID on us, and they allow us to go because they saw that I was British and he's from France. But the American black guy that drove the car, they took him to the station, arrested him. He went to the highest prison in California for like a week before he was bailed out on purely, I don't even know to this day why that was. And so if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, that is shining a light on, like, say, what happened to George Floyd. But there's many cases like what I have been through and Clement have been through, where we're just like stopped and harassed because we look like, you know, the minority, and we have, you know, this is what we experience. However, that's why we kind of came with Is It News. We want to be the kind of voice that will and platform that can shine light on things like this. And me being older, Clement was younger, and also Daniel, who works with us as editorial, was also able to teach me a lot of things because obviously I was older. I had all these experiences, and being able to learn from younger people what they're experiencing and what they're thinking was also helping me to change. So when I was recently offered a job as a casting director for this amazing casting company in Paris called Ego Casting, as you know, the name ego, which, you know, is not about, you know, your ego, it's just about something different. And Clement and Daniel was able to be that connection for me to see a new light and to see a new way of fashion. Because when I was growing up and modeling, the stereotype of fashion was, you know, white, Caucasian, and the token black. And you didn't even have plus size people, non-binary, none of that was ever would have been included. And thanks to these guys who were able to like give me that connection, and me who actually want to learn and see more was able to do that. Bringing this into my casting, I was able to push for like plus size models, non-binary, you know, disabled, whoever it was, and force that change on the industry even more. Till now, the shoot was commissioned, it's done, and you know, they're choosing the plus size, non-binary, and I'm so happy for that change, only because these guys. And if I didn't listen, if I didn't pay attention, I would have my old ideas and my old thing that I've taught and learned from fashion. So I'm really grateful for this, and I feel like if you're in the industry and you want to, you know, change, or you want to see this change, you want to understand, then connect with all kinds of people, not just Black or Asian, but you can also connect with gays, non-binary, trans, you name it. And maybe we can have a broader understanding of when we try to produce our products and campaigns and ads. For instance, Asia is a broad, like, you know, country or continent where different types of Asian people. For me, I didn't even use a difference. I just thought everyone was just like one thing. Co-founder came on board. We start watching lots of animes. You know, start to look at different types of Asian people. So basically, if I were to do something, creatively, whether it's a shoot, a film, or an interview, I would know the difference between a Chinese person from Hong Kong to a person from Japan or a person from Korea. And it's really beautiful to know the difference, because they will feel appreciated and respect you even more for knowing the difference. And this is where representation and diversity and appropriation versus appreciation could happen, and could be, you know, we could see that change when we know a little bit more. I can touch on this one, it's quite interesting. Cultural appropriation, let's say in music, for instance. Elvis Presley, I don't know if you guys know Elvis Presley, really famous American rock and roll guy. Growing up, you'd hear about this guy, and you hear about Michael Jackson being compared to Elvis Presley, you know, this like music icon that contributes so much to music and rock and roll. A few years ago, I came across a documentary which led me to do more research into this. Turns out that Elvis Presley, when he was young, used to go to the Black Christian churches in the South, where he was from in America. And it was the tradition where Black communities in the South, when they're in church, to, you know, dance a certain way, sing a certain way. And so it had an impact on him. So when he did music, he brought that into music, but did not credit the fact that it came from this community, came from these guys. So when I was growing up and thinking, oh, this guy's music, I appreciate it, it influenced me. If I had known that it was my culture that had an impact on him to do something great in the world, I don't know what it would have done to me growing up thinking that, you know? So it shows like a deep cultural appropriation run in our institutions. Another example of cultural appropriation is this cover of GQ Style I did when I was modeling. Here, the new macho, like everything is so wrong about this shoot. Looking back at it now, I'm supposed to be a Japanese samurai dressed in Dior. All the guys, you know, American astronauts. The guy in the brown is supposed to be, I think, Indiana Jones, and the other one was supposed to be Zorro. And it's all macho, it's meant to be all straight, no representation is in there. I'm so embarrassed and ashamed that I'm trying to portray a Japanese person and their culture without having no understanding of anything to do with Japanese. I'm Black, it's not my culture, I don't know anything about it. And like I said at the time, just being the token guy, I'm like so grateful for the job, I'll go and do it. But no one was on set to even teach us and educate us about what we're trying to represent here. So this was my personal experience in cultural appropriation. One of my love for cultural appreciation is this King Jones collection he did, collaboration with incredible artist in Ghana. And if you look at this, where King Jones did not even hide his inspiration and where it came from for Dior, he was able to like really invest the time to understand the culture, understand the community, took someone from the community to collaborate with, you know, and credit it. This is the perfect example of appreciation, in my opinion. And I feel like this is a good step in the right direction. But I also would like to agree with Lola, what she said early on, where you would have your personal Black businesses that can be supported to like be a part of that contribution, and also not just being Black and, you know, showcasing our Black culture, but also implementing other culture and learning from other culture and just being creative and, you know, incredible. There you go, another slide from that. Another example of appreciation in my personal view is, what I experience is this painting that was done of me by an amazing artist called Lola, Mae Wansworth. And what was interesting is this painting was done 10 years ago. or even later. And it resurfaced during the Black Lives Matter movement. And why that was, it is because the church, which was been silent for a long time around these issues, because of Black Lives Matter and the George Floyd killing, they thought, like, let's do something to show our support like everybody would. And they asked the artists to showcase this painting in the Church of St. Albans in London, one of the oldest churches in England. And this is a good example because she, as a white female artist, decided to portray a Black Christ. Why? Because Black and minority people have been portrayed as the Holy Mary or as Christ during history or European history. You could see that. And for her to come to me, someone that she would know and invest her time with to understand and do this painting, you know, it was remarkable. It would have been nice to see more Black faces in there, but the fact that, you know, she uses me as the main person as Christ was amazing. All the news media came around it. Had an interview from the CNN asking me what it's like to be the face of the Son of God. And my personal view was, I don't see myself as God or Christ. I'm just Tafari. But what does this painting represent? Represents the suffering of many minorities and Black people, that we can connect to the suffering of Christ. And any human being can connect to this kind of suffering and joy because he was reborn and, you know, resurrected from the dead. So in a way, this was a really beautiful representation from a personal point of view of cultural appreciation. I really do believe in representation and diversity more so for me because I want to see all kinds of faces being represented and all kinds of people represented because it's a big ass world. So I was quite thankful for when we decided to do the Is It New show. Clement was like, you know, there's this guy, Luca Benini from Slam Jam. He's amazing. This is what he's about, all the streetwear thing around him. But what was interesting with Luca was the fact that when Italy was at its peak of fashion and innovation within fashion, he was looking at streetwear. What was streetwear culture? It's coming from this grassroots movement of people who feel disconnected from the mainstream fashion, so they can just wear their own street thing, have their own culture around that stuff. And for Luca Benini to look at that out there in the Black community in music and bring that into Italy as the first person to actually do that at the time is amazing, and was able to collaborate with not only Black, but like Asian designers, and, you know, make all of these incredible achievements. That interested me to do an interview with him. And that interested me in terms of diversity, where you have to be a platform that include everyone and try to include everyone. So if you're from Europe or you're from Asia or you're from Africa, there needs to be inclusion, especially as Lola said, a brand that is huge and employ thousands of people. You can't have just one face or one type of people. It needs to show representation. It needs to show diversity, because that way you would avoid appropriation. So yeah, that says it for me, really. And I hope that by the time I get to release Is It News, everyone can see, you know, what we're trying to do, and to include even more voices and more people into what we're trying to achieve. So yeah, that's just pretty it for me, really. Thank you.
Thanks, Tafari. That's really, really interesting and touching, I must say. Like, I don't know if Clement is on the call as well, but what you've gone through is something unfortunately pretty common, but it's always touching to hear that, like, in real life. It's pretty crazy. I think it's very interesting to see how these issues are part of the culture and very widespread. And these are, let's say, addressed to all sort of minorities, not just one or two. Is like all sort of minorities. When with Slam Jam we started thinking about how to actually use our voice to support communities in general and minorities. And we actually thought the best way would be to act local, first of all, especially because in Italy we've got completely different sort of issues, but still related to minorities. And these issues are really part of the culture. They're pretty systemic. So we think it's pretty priceless to have the chance to be with you today. And thanks again for the presentations. Now, I don't know if Professor Alietti has got some questions or thoughts to share.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Tafari. Thank you. Carlo, it's very, very interesting, your presentation. Also, the presentation of Lola is very interesting for us because it's for us it's interesting the relationship between appropriation, no? But because it's business, no? Just but also the appreciation is important because we can see a different way to appropriation. This is really interesting. And I have just a question for you, Tafari. When you talk about the situation in the fashion industry, no? Creative acts. For you now, it's really important to appropriation a culture, appropriation of one culture, from Black minorities, from Africa, from Asian world, all the world. This is appropriation. Is possible to change the vision of the final consumers, not the final consumers. It's possible to change the mentality, the mind of the final consumer from this experience, from this different way to understand the culture by the fashion industry, by the fashion products. For you, it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, it is possible that, but I feel like, as Lola was saying before, most, especially Gen Z, millennials, we are at a certain point now where we're like, we want to see diversity, we want to see, inclusion in across the board. We want to see representation across the board, and if there isn't, they're the first to make the outcry. Thank God for that. But I feel like it's down to brands to collaborate, to not just collaborate or give money to charities or tick the box. It's actually invest into spotting talents, supporting talents. We're all human beings, and we all like the idea of knowing someone who knows someone who can connect us. But I feel like, for example, with Is It News, we tried to talk to different magazines to sort of help us, put this voice out there, what we're trying to do. And the experience we got, is just like, if you're not really connected or know someone, it's difficult. Yeah. And I feel like it's okay that you need to know someone, it's fine, but we need to pay attention to, like, if everything that we bring through, right, everything that comes through is always through connections, then we need to ask ourselves a little question here. Like, what about that kid or that person out there who doesn't have the connections, doesn't have all this stuff? How are they coming through? How are they going to be seen? How are they going to be heard? And if you look at, for instance, people who are buying clothes, they want to, the same thing, music, fashion, it's all interlinked. If we look at our billboards and we look at our campaigns, what are we seeing? Are we seeing representation? Like, for instance, that shoot I did, if a young Black kid was looking at that shoot and just saw me there, it's like, I mean, I don't know, like, just something kind of wrong about it, because I'm not a samurai. So it's just these little things that, at the end of the day, the consumer, if they feel like they're included, they're going to spend more, they're going to buy more.
Yeah.
I completely agree with that. And I think we've seen over the past few decades kind of, again, I guess it's that thing of a lot of these dominant brands that have the big global impact from a cash perspective, from a what is desirable and aspirational perspective, have been led by, you know, white middle-aged men from a certain background, let's face it. But, you know, until, for example, the APAC communities and also Middle Eastern communities started spending, or they've been spending for years, right, coming into London and I'm sure other parts of the world, shopping, spending cash. Now the brands are like, okay, these communities are important to us because guess what? Our bottom line is affected by them massively. And so, you know, we've seen massive like blunders like D&G. I mean, D&G don't care, do they? Let's face it. But, you know, it's like, that's the thing. We want the decision makers to kind of do the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But if they don't, the world is shifting. Like millennials and Gen Zs really, really care. But also, you know, if you want to grasp commercial opportunities, look at those growing markets. Like, you know, before EMEA, whatever that was emerging, like that Africa, like Nigeria is going to be more populous than the States within a few, I think by 2050 or something. So it's like, it's that thing where the tide is shifting. So if companies want to be relevant, they will have to shift, and it's kind of get with the program or be left behind. And I think the smarter companies are getting it, but also what's exciting is thanks to Shopify, we've got this democratization of fashion, which is really exciting, where, do you know what, the kids will be all right. Like they're going to do it themselves on their own terms. And that's really exciting because that kind of power is no longer just in the hands of the few. It is potentially in the hands of the many. And that, I think, is what gives me a lot of hope and excitement and positivity and good vibes.
Yeah, just sorry, just a very, very short question about the representation of black bodies in the cover magazine and so on. No, it's really important to show the black bodies in the, for example, in the cover magazine for another change. It's not black. So, for example, normally we think that the black body has in a stereotypical way, but now I think it's changed, in the cover magazine, in the fashion magazine, they change the mind also in direction to normalize, the black bodies, or
well,
not.
I feel like if you take a look again at that Gigi's cover, you know, the way I looked back then, you know, black, as you call them, black bodies, but I'll just say black people or black models was always something comical or always something a little bit like, you know, cultural appropriation in the craziest way. Like, you know, if it's a black guy, let's put him in some zebra stripe thing or some like jungle thing or whatever it is, because that's the only thing we can associate it with. And now you see where like, not just black or Asian, but like people in general, we wear what we want to wear. We wear Dior, we wear Prada. So it's like now black models or Asian models are not just going to be like a guy with a samurai sword or the guy with a jungle book, but it's a guy wearing a nice suit who looks amazing and is just a nice, decent human being like anybody else. And this is what we see a lot more now, my personal experience, than let's say 10, 20 years ago.
Yeah, and you, Lola, what do you think about the representation of black female body in the cover magazine? What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, for me, obviously, I love magazines. Historically, I feel like obviously the future of them obviously is, you know, it's very different to what it was before. They really were the dominant force in beauty standards. You know, this is what's good looking. This is the beauty. This is whatever. And I think that was very, you know, that lack of representation, but at least for me growing up, was, you know, definitely affected me in terms of like, oh gosh, like, you know, I was quite chubby as well. It's like chubby black girl living in a sea of like, oh, my hair's not super straight, it's not blonde, I'm not thin. And, you know, that's, it just kind of, but, you know, women, obviously, because under the toxic patriarchy, we have body issues anyway. But I think that what I find a bit mad is that people of color are the global majority. So actually, it's been out of kilter for years for magazine covers or campaigns to not be representative of the global population. Do you know what I mean? And I think all we're not asking for, I suppose, or not, is for equality, and that means just seeing people who look like you. And that's the thing. It's like being Black or Asian or any other minority in certain Western countries, global majority, is as aspirational and desirable as being a white Caucasian person. And I think it's just like, to normalize it shouldn't be some sort of dramatic, like, oh my God, look at us, like pat on the back, like, you know, it's June, here we go, or Feb in the States, I suppose. And, you know, I just think if people actually take a step back, and another one of my principles is like, actually, if you just care about people or like really do things out of love and think, actually, how would I like to be treated, or how would I like my kids to be treated, or whatever else it is, then if people take a step back, then they'll see, oh, actually, this doesn't make sense, having, you know, 10 out of 12 covers all being representative of one specific skin color, when your target demographic and the whole world are other things. That, again, that's like, when we say representation, I think the word is like bandied about, but it literally is like, just look at your desired customers or target demographic. If they see people that look like themselves, most likely they're going to buy more or consume more. Like, it's kind of common sense, I suppose, as opposed to, and it's not been that common because, as my mum says, common sense is not common, because of, honestly, white supremacy, because of that ideal that white is right and, you know, that's the norm. Anything else is like a quota, which you tick off and keep it moving. And I think we need to move away from that. And I hope that we've all agreed that we are going to continue to move away from that.
I want to say, if you look at let's say the last Prada show, where all the girls were in the mountains, you know, in Europe, and they all like ended up around this fire pit. I don't know if you saw that last show, and it's like, you know, all the white European faces, and I look at that and I'm thinking to myself, like, imagine if we had everyone around the fire pit, because think about it, humanity, let's say 100,000 of years ago, would have all gathered around some kind of fireplace, sharing our stories and our ancestral stories. So this would have been a beautiful way to just bring us all together, rather than just having, like, you know, 10 white girls and then the token one and the token Asian to say, yeah, we put them in there. But we still, you know, you're still not including, you know, like everybody's in there. Trans, non-binary, that we all can sit on the table wonderfully for the first time and share our stories. And this would have been a great way to, let's say, showcase that. So this is another example where representation, exclusivity is, you know, is concerned. Me personally, I just feel like it's a beautiful thing when Asians are buying Prada or Stone Island, or you name it, or Africa, wherever we are from, South America. It's beautiful, and it means that you know, people are inspired and happy, you know, like what they're seeing. So it's a wonderful thing to include everyone, you know, in our campaigns, in our shows, and, you know, we want to advertise stuff. It's really beautiful because it shows that you appreciate your customers, and it shows that, like, you value your customers. You know, it shows that you're paying attention to your customers. And, you know, imagine, as Lola was saying, if she wasn't in the room, someone would have put the thing out rather than saying do-rag. And maybe they weren't even being malicious, but it's just a lack of, like...
They are, I think, being malicious, though. It's that sentiment around, like, white is not, like, white comfort in her. She didn't want to say black. She didn't want to say black.
Exactly.
White comfort was more important than what is important to the black culture, which is calling the do-rag the do-rag, because black people are the ones that use it. And I think that's actually a really interesting point that just came to mind.
Sorry. Yes. Okay.
Please, Erica, please.
Hi, everybody. Please. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so my question was, I remember an Instagram post from, I think, last year, in which Adele was wearing a traditional carnival costume from Jamaica, and a lot of people accused her of cultural appropriation. And what did you think when you saw that picture? Was it cultural appropriation, cultural appreciation, or like nothing at all?
I'll let Tafari speak on that one first because he's actually Jamaican, whereas I'm Nige, but I have my own thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, when I saw that, my first reaction was kind of like a little bit like, what? First of all, I remember seeing Adele being a plus-size beautiful woman, and now she's slim, and then she's like this Jamaican thing. So I was really confused when I saw that. Why? Because at no point through her career has she ever acknowledge anything Jamaican. At no point in the music videos or shoots where she ever allude or make references to anything cultural where Jamaica is concerned, where cornrows are concerned. So to see it pop up for the first time like this, definitely cultural appropriation. Should have, I feel like they, in one hand, it's like saying, wow, you know, I love this thing, I want to try it, it's amazing. But if you really do love something, like I said, Clement, my best friend, who grew up on lots of anime, you know, Fortnite, playing games and all this kind of stuff, and go to Asia a lot, wasn't able to show me the difference. Because for me, if I went to Hong Kong and say, oh, you look like Japanese, I would be offending so many people. Imagine me turning up, I'm a pop star, I did something, you know, alluded to Japanese or Asian culture, people be offended because at no point was I educated myself on anything in the past or show anything like that in the past. So when I do it, people can be like, oh yeah, you do understand, you do appreciate, you did your homework, this is cool. So to answer your question, yeah, that's appropriation, because I felt like if I had seen anything in the past related to Jamaica in anything she's done, then it would make sense for me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I think, and this is the other thing, it's like, not everything has to be is for everyone. Do you know what I mean? I feel like people should just know how to like respect and not offend, and just be like, it's like with the N-word when people are like, oh, well, they said in song, I should be allowed to say it. Why? It doesn't take away from your life to just not say a word that can offend so many people. Do you know what I mean? Because historically it has such like associations. And I think that's my thing. It's like, just like, it's really easy to just not appropriate and take stuff from people. Like if she loves Jamaican culture or whatever, then you can enjoy, like, listen to the music, like, you know, research, read, like there's so many ways without like doing things that, and especially in these times, like, you know, can offend or is appropriative. And, you know, I think that's where a lot of companies that I work with and brands that I work with are like, oh, you know, it's just really hard. Like, you just almost don't want to do anything because people are going to kick off. And it's like, if you listen to people and hear what is being said about what, you know, literally look up the definition of cultural appropriation, right? In fact, I think I've got it up here. I can read it out to you. Where's it gone? Oh, I did have it on here. I don't know what I've done with it. Maybe I'll put it in here. But the idea being that you're taking from people who you're not giving back to. And I think it's, I don't know, I feel like people would rather be offended about the idea of them being accused of cultural appropriation than actually just not appropriate. Here we go. The unacknowledged or inappropriate adoption of the customs, practices, ideas, etc. of one people or society by members of another, and typically more dominant people or society. And I think, you know, if people just look at that and think, do you know what, let me not, then they can move forward without drama. I feel like people bring it to themselves sometimes.
Thank you so much. I understand everything that you said, and I also agree with you. So thank you. I also have to go, so I thank you for all your everything you've said, and it was really interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Actually, I was just thinking as well about cornrows. The other thing with cornrows, right? Black people, we developed them as like art, as a way to keep our like curly hair, you know, what we like neat for us. And that's the other thing. It's like, you don't need to wear cornrows, Adele. Like, they're not necessary.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I have a... I'm sorry.
No, scusa, vai.
I have a question too for Tafari and Lola. Is there anything we can do here in Italy to spread awareness on this topic? Because before documenting myself for this meeting, I didn't know how widespread the phenomenon was even among Italian luxury brands like Gucci or Valentino. And so there is something we can do about it.
Well,
Thank you.
I think Gucci is a great example, I guess, of kind of that model that I've spoken to a few times about this collaboration and capital and whatever, because, you know, Black Twitter obviously called them out when they used that Dapper Don style that he'd created with, like, well, with the Louis Vuitton fabric, and then obviously he'd been shut down by all of the luxury brands and sort of was out of business, like down and out. And then, you know, Black Twitter kicked off. They were like, yo, you've literally just ripped this thing off. And obviously he's got his ongoing partnership with them, which has been hugely successful for them, both from a cultural, PR, commercial, all of the KPIs any brand could ever want to tick off perspective. So I think, like, just do more of that. That's the other thing. Like, it's not rewriting the like, if it ain't broke, well, the whole thing is broken, the system. But if you see something working, and again, that's like the Dior collection that Tafari showed, that's another example. Like, that's really it. Just make sure that you have, like, that these brands should just from the top just say, right, this is what we're doing. We're going to collaborate with 5 artists from, or 5 different designers or whatever from different groups that represent the target demographic, even if they just want to do it purely from who are our biggest, like, customer territories. Like, I'm not, like, I don't think we're asking for anything that isn't going to be beneficial for society and for these brands. But I think, you know, I'd say just work with more diverse teams, either as consultants or as design partners, or, you know, with editorial content, you know, people who've got great platforms going, music, art, whatever it is, just, you know, find them and pay them and tell people about them, and, like, use your platform to just, like, move towards equality. Really, that's it. If you're in a room and it's all people that look like you, then you might need to look into that, I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree in that last point, because many times I would go, I don't know, restaurant, club, friend's house, wherever, and I look around the room and I'm like, oh my God, I'm the only one Black in here. And it's like, I notice it, nobody kind of does, because it just seems so normal. But yeah, if you look in the workforce and, like, you want to get it right, and because the world is changing, nothing's the same, like, forever. You can amend and you know, and change. So as Lola was saying, within the workforce, the people in the middle, you know, keep it a bit diverse, because that way you will have a second opinion on something that I may never know. Like, for instance, me, who's a Black guy, again, who was getting a bit more education on Asia. And right now I'm so happy that I could look at, if an Asian person in the room, I can tell where they're from. And thanks to this person, because otherwise I would be I wouldn't even be racist. Me, I'm not particularly racist, but I feel like an Asian person would be so offended. And I feel it's the, you know, the same way, where if you have your workforce diverse and have good representations, you will not get into this trouble. One other thing I need to point out is, I went to Italy recently when we were doing an interview with Luca, and both Clement, myself, and Daniel, we went, and what I noticed, like, no one of any ethnic minority is working, not even a supermarket. You don't see them behind the till. You don't see, it's really crazy. And obviously, Europe is, you know, has its own history and its own people, but because the world is changing, everyone is moving, migrating, integrating. Obviously, we had the problems of wars that, you know, causes an influx of migration and, you know, all this stuff. But even without all these problems, I really feel like we can look, especially Italy, and see that, like, guess what? The world is changing, that's one. Two, the demographic, the communities are building within the next 10, 20 years. All the, like, immigrants, refugees from war will have kids, and those kids will grow up in Italy. And what are they going to see, and what are their future? They are going to shape Italy and change Italy. We never know what could happen. A boom in art, a new boom in designers coming out because there's some kid in Italy who came from Syria. I don't know. That's going to, like, change the world again. So we have to look down the line and see these kind of things and start implementing them in our communities. So behind the till, in the supermarkets, all the way up to the brands. If the brands want to really make a change, start hiring those people that from those marginalized communities, train them up, give them, education, and they can go in there and do something. And then the people on the streets who are behind the supermarket tills and orders will be like, I'm going to hire this person because guess what? I saw someone like that in Dior or Prada or Versace, so in other words, it's going to be really good across the whole board, not just fashion, but in Italy in general.
I think, yeah, I completely agree. And I also think the other thing is the pipeline in terms of, hiring, like a lot of roles, at least in fashion, are like, no matter how poorly they pay, they're like, we want a uni degree or we want X amount of work experience, which was probably unpaid. Like, actually that really pushes out quite a few segments of society when you can't afford to work in an industry because you can't afford to do an unpaid internship for X amount of years, or you didn't do a degree because you couldn't afford to, or you did a different one because your parents were like immigrants and they were like, actually do something more vocational so that you can get your money back on it. Do you know what I mean? I think it's like, how can like schools or actually companies, brands, whoever, like look at where they're hiring from to get that more diverse workforce that's more representative. And that's like, I mean, I don't have any like clear cut answers, but I think, it's very nuanced, but I think looking at that pipeline from schools, students, all the way up, like why, what are the blockers for diversity other than just like the whole networking thing, which is a big one across all industries. I think, I'm currently fundraising. It's the same thing there. The statistics around the amount of female founders that get money is outrageous. The amount of like Black female founders, I mean, just it's outrageous. And I think again, it's that the networking thing and the decision makers thing is such a big one. It's like, how can we get a more diverse array of people into certain fields? What are those blockers? And no one's in charge, but I feel like I always talk about brands because that's what I know, brands are retailers, but also because they have such a dominant effect on society and those big changes, because they are those employers, and economic inclusion is such a big deal. Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about this, Lola, but I remember my idea of the UK and Britain, is like royal family, and this is all white, and I'm gonna be this strange person. I get there, and when I eventually came through my dad and I got here, oh my God, like you look on the street, I go to the GP, and there's a Muslim woman, a Muslim doctor, or it's you look across the board. It's really beautiful how you see the different kinds of people. So for me now, I call the doctor. I don't even think twice who's going to be my doctor, because I'm just so used to seeing different people being represented. Could be an Asian doctor, could be a Muslim doctor. It's just like, I'm just kind of used to it now. And I really can't wait for that to transcend more into Europe. One other point, Clement's Muslim, and so is Ramadan. And it's crazy because I was like, what is this fasting thing? And I actually yesterday did a complete day of fasting, to like understand this culture more, understand my friend more. He's not a terrorist, he's not a bad person. And so it's like, these are the kind of steps, brands can take to understand different culture and people, because that way you won't allude to the stereotypes.
Yeah, that's a big one, because I also, like, I was actually doing a strategy for one of my clients, and it was around like key moments for clients, and client base, obviously Middle Eastern and APAC, and it's like, well, actually, I would literally just like, let's just look at the calendar. Like, we have our key moments. Like, it's not everyday Christmas. Like, what's important to them? What are those moments that are key to them? Is it Ramadan, Eid? Is it Singles Day? Is it whatever it might be, Chinese New Year? There's so many that, and this is why I always am like, it's hand in glove. If you use empathy and like, oh, what would I need, or what do they need in that territory, or that person, like, it's hand in glove with like commercial impact. And I feel like, having been in these boardrooms and having to do sign-offs and strategies, like, fundamentally money talks. So if these brands or businesses want to get that, like, continue to have like amazing growth or be relevant, then just using not even empathy, like empathy in the sense of, let me put myself in their shoes, what's going on for them, what is important to them, let me get to know that, then that just opens up a whole world of opportunities for them as well, which also it's just enriching, like just getting to know the cultures, like it's fun, it's cool.
Thank you very much. It's very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so are there any other questions?
Hi, do you hear me?
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, Lola and Tafari, for the image you created of the multiculturalism and as an enriching thing, because we in the mainstream voice, we are used to think, we are not, but the majority of people are used to think about migration, multiculturalism as a threat for our culture and our future. But so I want to thank you, because you shown us that this is not a point. A lot of cultures and a lot of new ideas came from all over the world, can help to enrich all culture, not to cancel it or change it. And so thank you so much.
Thank you.
So, any question? Any more question about this very, very interesting? Again, thanks. Very, very interesting. It's fruitful for our reflection about anti-racism and multiculturalism and so on. It's very, very fruitful, this meeting with you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing. I think the key take of this presentation, and thanks again for joining Tafari and Lola and Tafari. The thing is that the fashion industry is one of the industries that from the outside look like are quite open, actually. If you think about that, it's pretty crazy, because if you think about institutions like compared to the music, art, or fashion industries, I mean, institutions are in a way worse position when it comes to inclusion, embracing diversity, and actually changing the systemic culture that is not allowing diverse influences to get in, because that's a threat. That's what Leonardo was saying. But if you think that actually we're now focusing just on the most let's say open industries, and still the situation is quite harsh, that's pretty crazy. Talking about the music industry, there's an interesting phenomenon these days in Italy. Like second generations of immigrants from North Africa are starting a new wave of music, and that's incredible because they speak Italian way better than Italians. They dress so stylish, and that's a wave, that's a movement coming from the bottom. Brands, sports team, institutions ignoring these kind of things. At the same time, thanks to the Internet of Things and how easily, actually, as you Lola said before, how easily you can actually share a message through different vehicles like music videos and so on. This is actually approaching young generations, kids that are understanding way more about celebrating diversity and how enriching that is, because that's the main thing. What Slam Jam did in the past, it was very natural. It was just being very curious, being very bored about one single vision, and that's it. So what's different is not a threat, is something very exciting. So that's very natural in some cases, but I think also the Internet of Things and how people share and consume content these days can actually help making this a very widely approached phenomenon. So yeah, I would say let's stay positive and be confident everything is going to go the right direction. That's what we do as a company or player within an industry, which is quite open, but still there are so many cases of cultural appropriation. And so, yeah, we're trying to address that. And thanks again for helping us shedding light on this important topic.
No problem. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you.
The last question, just the last question about, I don't know if there are more questions.
You know what?
So,
Sorry, say I feel like people would have loved this on Clubhouse. By the way, I feel like it's a real Clubhouse vibe.
yeah, it's normal, but yeah, it's true. So,
yeah, I would say let's keep questions for the next time. Of course, being non-native English speakers can be a bit tricky for asking questions, but I think this is just the start of a broader conversation, and we can gather questions from the students and keep the conversation with Tafari and Lola that actually were so kind joining. And I think we can really keep doing something together with Laboratorio Antirazzista, Tafari and Lola for the future. I mean, super important, we think. And so, yeah, let's keep some questions for the next time, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Lola. Very, very. This is for you, Luke. This is for you.
Oh, thank you so much. Cheers.
Just from my garden. This is very big rose.
Beautiful. It's gonna look great.
But I'm sorry. It's a natural rose, but now for you is a virtual rose. I'm sorry, but it's. So thank you very much, Tafari. Your experience, your history is very, very interesting, and so I hope in the future you another meeting for discussing other questions about these issues, very, very important for our laboratory, but also for discussion about multiculturalism society and anti-racist, anti-discrimination practices at all the level of everyday life. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a nice evening, everybody.
Thank you very much for your participation.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, Lola. Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Bye. Thank you very much.